Hello, everyone. My name is Hyunjung, and today I will be presenting on antibiotic resistance and phage therapy as an alternative antimicrobial treatment. Oops. I'm a rising senior at Yongsan International School of Seoul, which is in South Korea. I'm on the tennis team and vice president of the STEM club, where we teach science experiments to younger grades. In the future, I hope to contribute to global health by researching new treatments in bacterial infections, teaching new generations of scientists, and solving inequalities in access to medicine. In the first part of my presentation, I will talk about the threat of antibiotic resistance. In the second part, I will talk about how we can combat antibiotic resistance and focus specifically on one of the promising alternative treatment options, phage therapy. As you might have heard, antibiotic resistance is a global threat to public health. The CDC calls it one of the world's most pressing public health problems. The blue on this graph represents the number of deaths due to different causes in 2016. Cancer was the leading cause of death, and antibiotic resistance caused at least 700,000 deaths that year. The purple color is the number of deaths, estimated number of deaths due to antibiotic resistance in 2050. It could increase dramatically to 10 million, surpassing the current number of deaths due to cancer. Antibiotic-resistant bacteria have proliferated because of overuse and misuse of antibiotics in farms and hospitals. Antibiotics are commonly used in crowded, unsanitary factory farms to boost the growth of livestock and prevent outbreaks of bacterial infections. They are also misused in hospital settings, such as when they are given for viral infections, which can't be treated by antibiotics. All of this overuse and misuse is a problem because it puts selective pressure on bacterial populations so that only antibiotic-resistant bacteria survive and multiply. Adding to the problem is that the development of new antibiotics is sluggish. This photo shows how new antibiotics were found for much of the 20th century. It was an easy screening method. These horizontal lines are different types of bacteria, and this vertical line is a microorganism that secretes antibiotics, an antibiotic that kills the bacteria all around it. Today, we have screened virtually all of the naturally occurring antibiotic classes, which means that pharmaceutical companies have had to turn to more difficult and costly methods to develop new antibiotics. Additionally, because of campaigns to improve antibiotic use, newly developed antibiotics are safe for desperate situations, and even then only minimally used, so they don't sell well. Because of these factors, developing antibiotics is not profitable, which is why many pharmaceutical companies have been unwilling to develop new antibiotics. However, not developing new antibiotics is not an option. 10 million people could die every single year by 2050 if we don't take action. Should antibiotic resistance continue at this rate, simple surgeries could be death sentences because they rely on antibiotics to prevent bacterial infections. This would be a horrifying return to the grim realities before antibiotics were discovered. Thus, pharmaceutical companies must develop new antibiotics, and we must manage our overuse and misuse of them. Other efforts to combat antibiotic resistance have centered around new approaches or previously overlooked approaches, one of which is phage therapy, which was used in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union since about 100 years before, but sidelined in the West after the discovery of antibiotics in 1928. You might be wondering, what are phages? Phages is short for bacteriophage, which means bacteria eater. Phages are viruses that infect bacteria. They kill bacteria by first infecting them and then lysing them as part of their life cycle. Several years ago, phage therapy was used on Tom Patterson, who was infected by an antibiotic-resistant bacteria. No chemical antibiotics worked on him. It seemed like nothing could be done to save his life. Then his wife read about phage therapy and wanted to try it as a last resort. 3 days after his first intravenous phage therapy treatment, Tom Patterson woke up from his coma and began to recover. Today, he is alive and well. His story shows the promise of phage therapy. To explore why phage therapy is a promising treatment option, I'll go over its advantages. As with any other treatment, it does have limitations, such as limited research conducted on it so far and the risk of septic shock, but I won't go into them here because of limited time. As you might have heard, the human microbiome is essential for good health, serving diverse functions from stimulating the immune system to synthesizing necessary metabolites. That's why broad-spectrum antibiotics, which decimate the human microbiome, can have harmful effects on our health. As you can see in this picture, phages are very specific. They can only infect specific bacteria with a specific receptor, so they can't decimate the human microbiome. In this respect, phage therapy is a good treatment option. The ubiquity of phages means that there are many options to pull from. They can be found in places such as sewers and hospital wastewater, or anywhere where bacteria are present. There are so many different types of phages that they outnumber bacteria 10 to 1. So we can always find new phages for treatment, even when bacteria develop resistance to the original phages used for treatment. One way to increase the effectiveness of phage therapy is to use it with antibiotics, which is known as combination therapy. Certain phages and antibiotics can be synergistic, which means that they amplify each other's effects. Tom Patterson, who I mentioned earlier, actually received combination therapy. Here are some take-home points. Antibiotic resistance is an alarming global health threat. We must develop new antibiotics and stop overuse and misuse of antibiotics. Phage therapy is one of the promising options to treat antibiotic-resistant bacterial infections. Phage therapy can be more effective when used in combination with antibiotics. Thank you all for listening. And thank you to the Global Health Leaders Conference team for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you to my parents and friends for supporting my pursuits and passion for global health.